wild expanses near Kruger National Park, a lone white horse named Moi had once been a trusted companion to his master. For many years he carried goods across the rough terrain, tirelessly helping his owner with everything he needed. But as time passed, old age took its toll on Moi. His legs began to tremble, and his body no longer had the strength it once did. The owner, seeing the horse's weakening state, considered him useless and decided to abandon him. One cold morning, the master tied a leash around Moi's neck and led him out into the desolate fields near the reserve. The landscape stretched, endlessly barren and uninviting, with only a solitary tree standing in the middle of the dry land. With one final glance at the horse, the man walked away without a word, leaving Moi to face the harsh reality alone. As Moi turned his head to look at the departing figure, his eyes were filled with sorrow, as if he understood that this would be the last time he would see his master. The hot wind blew through his disheveled mane, but it no longer had the strength to make a sound or struggle. The sun slowly sank beneath the horizon, casting a long shadow over the forlorn horse, leaving him to stand in the middle of the field, alone and abandoned. Through the cold night, Moi stood motionless, hungry and thirsty. His legs trembled, and old wounds began to bleed again. The insects buzzed around him, and the night air stung his skin. He let out a weak neigh, as if calling out to the endless silence for help. But no answer came. The tree was his only support, but the rope around his neck cut deeper with every movement, causing him pain. That night seemed to stretch on forever, with the old horse clinging to the hope of a miracle or the sweet release of an end. The next morning, the scent of blood in the air caught the attention of a hungry pride of lions. 3 lionesses and 2 male lions cautiously approached, their sharp eyes scanning the area. Moi noticed their movements, but was too weak to escape. His heart raced as the golden eyes of the lions drew closer, the inevitable danger circling him. The pride surrounded the tree, growling softly as they prepared to strike. Moi pressed himself against the tree trunk, his body shaking with fear and resignation. He bowed his head, accepting the fate that seemed unavoidable. A lioness, her claws extended, leaped at the helpless horse, but just as she was about to pounce, a sudden roar of a jeep engine echoed from the distance, halting the lions in their tracks. The 2 rangers, Elijah Lamini and Richard Van Zyl, had been patrolling the reserve for more than a decade. They spotted the lions and immediately parked the vehicle. Elijah grabbed his gun, while Richard lifted his binoculars to get a closer look at the situation. Realizing that the horse was not a wild animal, but a domestic one left behind, the rangers knew they couldn't just stand by. Without hesitation, Elijah fired a shot into the air, startling the lions. Richard shouted loudly and clapped his hands, creating a threatening noise that caused the lions to retreat. One lion let out a frustrated roar, but slowly withdrew into the bush with the others. Once the immediate danger passed, the rangers cautiously approached the horse. With eyes full of sympathy, they saw the deep wounds that covered Moi's body. "This is a domestic horse, abandoned here," Elijah muttered, stroking the dirty white mane. Moi's eyes were filled with tears, as if he understood how close he had come to death. "We can't leave him here," Richard said urgently. "We have to get him to the center." Elijah nodded, and the 2 rangers gently coaxed Moi toward the jeep. Though his legs shook, the horse was comforted by their presence. Richard laid an old cloth down in the back of the jeep, while Elijah carefully guided Moi up into the vehicle. As they drove back to the conservation center, they radioed ahead to the veterinary station, preparing for the urgent treatment that Moi would need. The jeep rolled across the vast grasslands, leaving behind the dried bloodstains beneath the lonely tree. Moi gazed up at the sky, the early morning light now softer, as if offering a gentle reminder that hope wasn't lost. Elijah whispered, "Not all hope is lost if we reach out to save it." Upon arriving at the center, Dr. Clara Bosch and her team immediately tended to Moi. She gently cleaned the wounds, disinfected them, and gave the horse painkillers. Despite the significant blood loss, Clara confirmed that there were no serious internal injuries, As Richard offered fresh water, Moy sipped it slowly, grateful for the relief. In the following days, Moy rested in a separate enclosure, surrounded by a roof and warm straw to keep him comfortable. Elijah and Richard took turns, visiting him, bringing carrots and red apples. Moy, though initially shy, began to respond, rubbing his head against Elijah's hand whenever he approached. Clara monitored his wounds daily, applying ointments and soothing the accumulated pain. A week later, Moy could stand for longer periods. Walking in the yard without trembling, Elijah couldn't hide his joy. "He's recovering faster than we expected," he exclaimed. The staff at the center grew fond of Moy, calling him their special guest. Clara's daughter, Lindy, even drew a picture of Moy, writing "Brave Horse" beneath it. Richard renovated the old stables behind the center, deciding that Moy would stay with them permanently. On golden afternoons, Elijah would ride his bike out to the yard to let Moy walk around the trees. The horse, once weary and abandoned, now had a spark in his eyes. Though the scars of his past remained, he was once again a living being surrounded by love and care. Elijah often sat with Moy, talking to him like an old friend, sharing stories about patrols, the weather, and everything in between. Moy seemed to understand, his ears twitching when he heard Elijah's voice. Richard, too, spent time by Moy's side, sipping tea and stroking the horse's mane. "I had a horse like that once," he confided in Clara. As the days passed, Moy regained his strength and began running around the yard, proudly showing off his health. The children at the station adored him, calling him the wonderful old horse. One day Elijah took Moy out to the back lawn. The sun was bright and the sky was clear. He removed the reins and said, "From now on you are free. But don't go far." Moy neighed joyfully, running a few laps around the lawn, then returning to Elijah's side, not wanting to leave the place where love and protection surrounded him. Richard laughed. "It looks like he's chosen to stay here. No need for a bridle anymore." Moy had become a living symbol of the center's compassion, and his story spread across social media, inspiring people everywhere. Visitors to Kruger National Park would sometimes stop by to see the miracle horse. Elijah would always share the story of how they had arrived just in time to save him. Moy lived many more years, each scar telling a story of survival. He was no longer the abandoned horse, but an integral part of the conservation center's family. Sometimes it's human kindness that can change a life, and that's the story of Moy, the horse who was saved just in time.